The third test against India, England closing the day on 5 gold medals won at the Paralympics in Tokyo. But for the next hour, we're going to pay tribute to a man who's described some of the most dramatic moments in British sporting history.
And Bolt is already beginning to draw clear. Bolt wins in 9.68 seconds. It's a new world record. It is a staggering performance. And so a stadium roars and a nation roars as Ennis goes on to win the 800 metres, and with it, Olympic gold. We have seen one of the most sensational upsets in the history of heavyweight boxing. Anthony Joshua has been stopped by Andy Ruiz Jr. in the 7th round.
Freeman, with the wind of Australia blowing from behind, takes it up. This is a race Australia will remember forever, they said, and you bet they will. It's gold for Cathy Freeman.
Greg Rutherford wins Britain's first gold medal in the long jump, their first medal of any colour for nearly 50 years.
Bedlam in the ring here in Dusseldorf as Tyson Fury makes history.
The South-style Gypsy King is the heavyweight champion of the world. Who could have dreamt that Britain would win 3 gold medals in the main showpiece arena of London 2012, the Athletic Stadium? What a night for British athletics. What a night for British sport.
So yes, our boxing and athletics correspondent Mike Costello is leaving the BBC after an incredible 44 years. And for the next hour, we'll look back at his career. We'll relive some of the highlights and we'll speak to some of the people who were there along the way. And Mike is with me in the studio. When I say 44 years, does that seem a bit surreal?
It does, actually. But listening to all of that there, I mean, how lucky have I been? If you told the young lad of 16 who got on the 53 bus from the Old Kent Road in South London up to Oxford Circus and Broadcasting House that, you know, he would go on to watch that kind of sporting feat being accomplished by so many great names, as you say, some of the greatest names in the history of sport, then I think he would have thought you were speaking in a foreign language. So I've been blessed, truly blessed.
Yeah, you say luck though. These things don't come by luck. They come by skill, by talent, by being incredibly dedicated to your craft. And we'll highlight a lot of those things, I'm sure, as we go through the next hour. We've got some special guests coming up as well. We should say now, I did tweet that we were going to be doing this and somebody said, for a horrible moment, I thought he died.
Well, I did check my pulse, yeah.
You're very much still with us and you're not retiring and we hope we'll still be hearing you on 5 Live as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to leave behind, but a lot to look forward to with this great live boxing that I've got with DAZN coming up, but hopefully with BBC 5 Live still involved in athletics and with the podcast. So in a sense, the best of both worlds, for sure.
All right, well, let's go back to the early days, shall we? You mentioned 1976, when you were 16 years old and you were on a bus going to work for the BBC for the first time. So how did that happen?
Quite simply, I wrote to a number of television companies in my last year at school back in 1976. There wasn't the same kind of environment within the education landscape whereby today almost every child goes on to at least 18 and then a lot are encouraged to go on to university. It was very different back then. The vast majority of school children in the mid-1970s left school at 16. And I don't know why. I don't know what the trigger was to write to television companies, but strangely, the BBC were the only one who wrote back and invited me to an interview in central London, and I got a job as a filing clerk in the accounts department. So that was where it all started. And
that's extraordinary. So you started off at the very, very bottom and you worked your way up the ladder very gradually.
And I was saying on a staff Zoom call a couple of days ago how I've had so many lucky breaks along the way. And the first one came within 6 months of joining the BBC because they decided within the accounts world of the BBC that they would split the processes of accounting for the BBC's domestic programmes and keep those separate from the BBC's World Service programmes. And I was working as just one of two with a woman called Sandra, who, because she'd been there forever, was given first choice as to whether she would stay working where we were in a place called Cavendish Square, just around the corner from Broadcasting House, or move to Bush House, the long-time home of the BBC World Service. She decided to stay, so I was shipped over to Bush House and the BBC World Service, which had much more of a kind of a family feel, was easier to move around. We had to go to various different departments as part of our job, and that included going occasionally to the sports room. And so there was a lucky break. Had I stayed in Cavendish Square, I wouldn't have got those early opportunities. And eventually I was given a job having pestered the sports room and the people there as a runner on a Saturday afternoon, literally running results from the sports room across the bridge at Bush House to the sports studio. And eventually I was given a permanent job as a broadcast assistant and then moved up the ladder from there.
Yeah, and you were quickly actually on the road. Well, I say quickly, but, you know, these things do take time. But you went to go... You went to one of the most, you know, intense sporting environments that you could imagine, because you were sent to cover the India against Pakistan Test series in Pakistan.
That was my first foreign assignment in 1989. And when you consider this was long before the internet, certainly 3 or 4 years before the arrival of the internet, no mobile phones. I remember in terms of filing reports via the telephone, we would get back to the room after the day's play. Sometimes there was a broadcast line that had been set up by the equivalent of BT in Lahore or Karachi or wherever, and London, and you'd sit and wait at the end of the day for the connection to be made. And I would wake up, and I promise you I would wake up some nights, all I could hear was, hello London, hello London, hello London, waiting for that connection to be made. But there were times you'd go back to the hotel, you'd call the operator in the hotel and they would say, wait in your room and we will call you back when we get a connection to London. So a very different working landscape in a very difficult place to work.
Yeah, well, we'll take your word for it that you did get through. We couldn't find in the archives any of your reports from Pakistan, unfortunately, but we did find this, and this was ahead of the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona.
The Olympic spirit has overwhelmed Barcelona as the countdown continues to the greatest show on earth. For 2 weeks, the capital of Catalonia will also become the capital of the sporting world. The Olympics have triggered badly needed regeneration, and the city has undergone a £4 billion facelift since being awarded the Games.
L'organisation des Jeux de la 25e Olympiade.
How did they let him on?
No, you sounded great, but you don't sound like you.
No.
So did you get voice trained?
Yes. Yeah, that was important for the BBC World Service. They had a sound and we all had to adapt to that sound. But it was a case of either adapt or you don't get on air. And so that was part of the process back then. Just going back very quickly to that 1989 tour of Pakistan, the Indian tour, it was where Sachin Tendulkar made his Test debut at the age of 16. So another one of those amazing moments that I've been lucky to be present at. And he played at 16, walked out twirling his bat. I think India were 37 for 4 in the National Stadium in Karachi. And that was my first experience of the greatest. And I've seen it with Floyd Mayweather and Usain Bolt and others. The greatest being able to react under the lights just as if they're in the nets or in a sparring ring or on a training track. They can adapt as if, you know, the phrase is that they make it look as if it means nothing when it means everything.
Yeah, straight into the spotlight. You mentioned boxers, you know, aspiring boxers and being in the training ring. I mean, you were working for World Service, but you were also coaching and competing actually in amateur boxing, weren't you?
When I got to the BBC World Service, by then I got to the sports room, got the job as a broadcast assistant in 1983. By then I was coaching. And that was a big part of my development because within the sports room there wasn't anybody who had any particular passion for or knowledge of boxing. And at that stage, the National Amateur Championships here in this country, the ABA finals, were always shown on television. They were shown after the news on a Friday night on BBC One. That's how massive amateur boxing was back then. And I'd be seen in the corner when we had a pretty successful time at the club I was at, the Lynn Club in South East London. And so the journalists there and producers and editors would see me on television in the corner and would think, well, maybe he knows a little bit about boxing. And from there, everything seemed to develop. They gave me opportunities within boxing that nobody else was keen to take up.
And you actually trained a fighter who got to the 88 Olympics and then went on to have a successful professional career as well.
Henry Akinwande, who fought Lennox Lewis for the world heavyweight title. He won a version of the world heavyweight title, the WBO version, when it was less well regarded than it is now. But yeah, that was a great experience, and that served me well all the way through to have been involved with an athlete of Olympic class. Even though training methods, nutrition, the appliance of science to sport has changed, some of the fundamentals I learned back then are still very much part of what I bring to what I do now.
And do you think that gave you extra respect in the boxing world and among coaches and among the trainers that you've worked with over the years?
I think it has. Once that's filtered out, not everybody, at first meeting knows that, but down the years, those people who've respected that I've at least been involved in some way. I've taken a few smacks on the chin, even at a very low level, but I get an understanding of what it entails. I haven't done the professional circuit. I boxed only as an amateur, but having been around these people for so long, it's given me that kind of foot in the door that other journalists and commentators haven't had.
Mm-hmm. At what stage did you start commentating? So you moved from reporting into commentary?
The first commentary I did was at the 1995 World Athletics Championships. I'd been covering various cricket tours. I remember after that 1989 tour in Pakistan where India were touring, I went to England's tour of India in 1993. And when I came back, the sports editor, a great mentor in my career called Ian Thomas, asked me if I wanted to become the cricket correspondent for the World Service. And I said that I just don't know enough about the sport and that I wouldn't want somebody covering boxing who knew as little about boxing as I knew about cricket. I knew enough to get reports done and to provide a bit of colour, but not nearly enough to commentate on the sport or to provide that kind of scope that a correspondent should have. And the World Service just didn't have the budget for big fight rights, to pay for the broadcasting rights to take on board big fights. And the other sport that I've always had a passion for was athletics. And the boss, Ian, said to me, what sport do you want to cover? And I said, athletics. And he said, well, the next few gigs are all taken up, but down the line, we'll see what we can do. And 1995 came around and I was given the schedule of what I was wanted to do at the World Championships in Gothenburg, and it looked fairly thin. So I thought I'm going to have a crack at commentary. And so I did some practice at home with old videotapes, and I commentated into cassette tapes. And then had a go at the championships themselves. And I do remember the first morning involved the heats of the men's 400 metres. Michael Johnson was running. And this was just a practice that I was doing. And I commentated as if he was winning the World Championships and the Derby and the Grand National all in one. And this was just a first round heat. And you could see other commentators turning around and looking at me and wondering, what's he talking about? And the producer on the other end just said to me, calm down, Mike, calm down. Where are you going to go when he gets to the final? So that was a lesson learned from the very first morning of my commentary career.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether you're going to thank us for this or not. I haven't heard this, but this is some of your commentary from 1995 and those World Championships.
Matete starts very fluently here, halfway down the far side, and Matete is already taking up the running, closing down on Zadoinov on his outside. Matete is flowing. He's in good form, the Zambian, the world champion. Striding away as they come towards the line. Robinson takes second, Keter third. In fourth place, Zadoinov. The winning time, 48.23 seconds for Samuel Matete, the fastest so far. The big Zambian is in great form.
I think you pitched that absolutely spot on.
That was rushed. That was really rushed. But without that first
step...
You're
your own harshest critic. We all are our own harshest.
But also without that first step, you can't move on. So to take that away then and bring that home and have producers and editors listen to it and decipher it and just to help you develop. And then the next time you go to do commentary, then you've got all those elements of criticism in your mind and you build and build and build each time.
Well, your first proper Olympics as a commentator then was 2000. And one of the defining moments of that Games was Cathy Freeman, national hero in Australia, and her gold in the 400 metres.
The race of our lives, it was called in one newspaper today, and it's underway with Cathy Freeman drawn in lane 6, resplendent in her full-length bodysuit. Down the
I was just totally overwhelmed because I could feel the crowd just totally around me, all over me. I just felt them, everybody's emotions absorb into every pore of my body.
Freeman, with the wind of Australia blowing from behind, takes it up. This is the race Australia will remember forever, they said, and you bet they will. It's gold for Cathy Freeman in 49.13 seconds. She's hardly drawing breath. She's borne the burden of expectation. And what a night. A proud, proud night for Australia, for the country's Indigenous people, and for Cathy Freeman.
Tingles down the spine listening to that, Mike. That's amazing. What a moment in the stadium.
That was one of those where, when I mentioned there that she'd borne the burden of expectation, Australia had been waiting for that for 7 years. When they were awarded the Olympics in 1993, and I've written about this on the BBC Sport website today, she was earmarked at that point as the potential star of the Games all that time. And so it was building and building and building. And I knew, working for the BBC World Service, because that would have been a much more difficult commentary for Five Live, because Catherine Merry took the bronze, which wasn't such an issue for a World Service audience who I was commentating to at the time. But that's a date, Monday the 25th of September, that I'd earmarked that for the whole of the year, like athletes know when their heats are, when their semi-finals are, when the final is, and they build their training sessions around that. Monday the 25th of September was on my mind all the way through 2000. I knew that would be, at that stage of my career, the biggest night of my commentary career, and that was a really, really important night.
Well, you talk about the impact around the world, and have a little bit of a listen to this, because this is from a phone-in during this last Olympics that we've just had in Tokyo. And World Service broadcast this. They asked for people's favourite commentary moments, and Benjamin, who'd listened to that commentary in Gambia, got in touch.
Yeah, I was in Gambia at the time. I didn't have access to TV at the time, and radio was for my window into the world, so I just listened to it. And yeah, the commentary, it was so spine-tingling. As she said there, that moment was silent. It's like, okay, everybody was watching or listening and just waiting to see her do it. And yeah, I'm glad that she did it. It was so amazing, really amazing. And for me, it's just amazing because I think it was Mike Costello that was doing it, right?
Yeah. That
radio commentary. And he's brilliant anyway. But the way he set it up, like the build-up, everything, I felt like I was there. And even describing what she was wearing, because I don't think anybody has worn what she wore for a race like that, or one suit and everything. So that was just amazing. So yeah, and yeah, for me, like as a black guy, British, but lived in Sierra Leone for a long time, then moved to Gambia, seeing that and it was inspiring for me, thinking, just give people opportunities. If you give people opportunities, that's something, and with their ability, they can achieve a lot of things. And, you know, I hope that was a barrier-breaking moment. And also I've got a daughter now, she's 15 months old. I'm hoping that as she grows up, I'm like going to show her that moment, like, hey, these are something you can achieve with opportunity and ability.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I always used to say about the World Service, it was like a global local radio, in that you got such a feeling from the correspondence from the listeners. And for most of that time, I mean, 2000 would have been the early days of emails. I don't know if texts were around at that stage, but we used to get letters from all over the world. And you think of the effort that was taken to post, you know, an international style letter to the BBC World Service, quite often just the BBC World Service London, and it always got there. And that kind of response is, and he said there, you know, I felt like I was there. That has to be the aim of every single commentator. And I think, just as a funny aside, I think the presenter there was Alex Capstick. At that same Olympics Hicham El Guerrouj of Morocco was beaten in the 1500 metres, and he was the strongest favourite of any event on the track. And as he came off the track, I remember Alex was in the mix zone and he reported up to us live on air saying, and this is a defeat that Hicham El Guerrouj will never get over. And about an hour later, we were down by the waterfront in Sydney, and we were in the same kind of bar area as El Guerrouj, and he could not have been happier. He could not have been giddier. So that was one of the many forecasts we made over the years that went askew.
It just proves we should never project our own emotions onto athletes. Let's bring in somebody who has worked alongside you in the commentary boxes in athletic stadiums around the world. Alison Kervishley, good evening.
Hey Ellie, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Look, speak to the legendary Mr. Costello.
I mean, I don't know what I could say, Ellie. You know, I mean, it's been
no secrets.
The most. Well, I will have to be careful. Yeah, listen, I have 15 years with this man. And he's my right-hand man. Well, normally I sit on his right, so he's my left-hand man. But I've learned from the best. You know, you know him so well, Ellie, and listeners will know him as this calm, measured commentator and correspondent. But you know, when he's needed to build the emotion. Although I think you're right, Mike. I think they fast forwarded the commentary of that earlier, 1995. That was on double speed, I think. Yeah. But when he needs to, he builds the emotion at exactly the right time. And I become a listener. You know, I have to keep remembering that I've got to pick up the mic and come in when he needs me to. But I've had more Olympic Games next to Mike now as I did with. As an athlete, and I couldn't ask for a better companion.
I want to get some insight into what he's like just before a commentary in a moment, because I kind of think I probably know some of the answers to that. But we'll talk about the commentary. But you also presented programmes, you presented documentaries, Mike, when you were at World Service, and this is from 2004, ahead of the Athens Olympics. You'd heard about a 17-year-old who was breaking records out in Jamaica, so you went out there to speak to him.
Jamaicans have a motto that reads, out of many, one. And out of the many sprinters this island nation has produced down the years, one may be about to upstage them all. At 17, Usain Bolt is running quicker than anyone else in history at the same age. Quicker than Jesse Owens, Carl Lewis, Michael Johnson and the rest. Earlier this year, he broke the world junior record for 200 metres that had stood for 20 years. And now he and his country are dreaming of Olympic glory in Athens later this year. This could be the beginning of one of the most amazing sports stories in recent times.
What is it that drives you in athletics? Is it fame, achievements such as records, or the money? What is it?
Well, it's really achievements. From when I was just very small, I love to win. So for me to win, it really helps me to want to win more. So it drives me to always go there and do my best.
In the National Stadium in Kingston, you had a great night that everybody here has been telling me about when you won the 200 metres at the age of 15 at the World Junior Championships. Can you tell us what you remember of that night?
Well, that was a very wonderful night for me. I was very nervous at the beginning of the race because I was running in front of a lot of people in Jamaica and they all shouting my name, so I was really nervous. It's the first time ever really competing in front of my home crowd, so it made me pretty nervous. I know everybody was looking for me to really bring home the only goal, so I just went out there, did my best. The race was a little bit shaky, but I came out victorious.
That was the 17-year-old Usain Bolt. And that was a prediction you got bang on, one of the biggest sporting stories of our time, as it turned out, Mike. But, I mean, he sounded pretty laid back even then.
He sounded laid back, but actually he's, at that stage, one of the most nervous interviewees I've ever been in front of. He was very, very nervous back then at the age of 17. Hadn't done a lot of interviewing, hadn't seen a lot of cameras pointed at him at that stage. And I remember we had to, as part of the process of making a documentary like that, put forward a proposal and give it to our editor and then cost it. And he would then decide as to whether it was feasible.
So you said, I want to fly to Jamaica and interview this 17-year-old.
And that was a hard sell. And right at the bottom, I remember I've still actually got the document. I put that let's get him first before anybody else gets to him. But it took time because he went to the Olympics that same year in 2004 in the 200 metres. And in the morning heats, he finished only in 5th place. Now, the Jamaicans said that he was carrying an injury, and that, in some senses, was used as an excuse stroke reason. But I do remember somebody sat next to me saying, "Oh, some superstar, Mike," because we broadcast that documentary immediately before the Olympics. And here's me saying, this man might be the greatest athlete we've ever seen. It might be one of the great sports stories. And so he flunked it at the Olympics for whatever reason. And then it took until 2008. At the next World Championships in 2005, he got to the 200 metres final, finished last. And then in 2007 at the World Championships, he took the silver medal. So there was that kind of, that curve of improvement on the graph. And then finally at 2008, the first year, by the way, that he took to the 100 metres, because when I was in Jamaica in 2004, everybody was talking about him being the next Michael Johnson, would win 200 and 400 metre golds at the Olympic Games. But by 2008, he'd switched to the 100 and 200, and then that was the arrival of the legend that we know.
Let's hear that moment from 2008 when you proved your editor that you were right.
It is the one we've been waiting for weeks and months. It's the men's Olympic 100 metres final.
Set.
And they're away first time, and Bolt gets a good start, but so too does Richard Thompson, and Bolt is coming through to take up the running, and Bolt is already beginning to draw clear. Bolt wins in 9.68 seconds. It's a new world record, and again he eased up on the way to the line. It is a staggering performance from an athlete who has been described as a freak of nature, and he has just run like one. 9.69 seconds. The time has been rounded up in his first season in the 100 metres. Usain Bolt takes the biggest prize of all, the Olympic gold medal. And Jamaica, after producing so many great sprinters down the years, can celebrate at last the Olympic champion in the 100 metres.
Again, tingles
Amazing.
down the spine. What an incredible moment. And you did that so brilliantly, because to commentate on something which is lasting less than 10 seconds, how do you prepare to do that?
Practice is the only way. I don't think there's any real template for the 100 metres, because it happens so quickly. And you've got 3.5 phrases maybe to get them over the line, 9 point whatever seconds. And it is just a case of practice, and most of the time in a stadium, because you see a different race live on the track as to what you see on the screen. I quite often use the screen for the start and then use naked eye for as much of the race as is possible. And that is heavily dependent on where the commentary position is. For Tokyo, for example, and at London 2012, we were pretty much right on the line, so you can then rely on naked eye. But if you're even 2 or 3 yards either side of the finish line, the angles can be distorted and deceptive, so you have to be very careful as to how much naked eye you work on and how much of the screen in front of you work on.
Yeah, Ali, I remember a few times I was lucky enough to watch Usain Bolt live as well, and the focus of him on the start line as well. We used to watch him on the start line and try and read his body language, and he was always so laid back. Ali, what was it like sitting alongside Mike Costello in those moments before the start of the 100 metres? Was he chilled, relaxed, or not?
Do you know what? It's much like an athlete, Ellie. It's, Mike, he will go quiet. I mean, he's a quiet guy anyway, but he will go quiet. He's thinking about... this guy has so many stats in that grey matter, and he has this ability to just pull lines and stories and stats, and he doesn't write anything down. He absolutely categorically, I sit right next to him. He hasn't got anything written down. This is all just, he's a storyteller, and he does it so well. And I think, he knows how important, we heard Benjamin earlier talking about how important radio is to people, particularly the World Service in areas where they don't have television. And he tells the story so well. And I think you're right, just as we're watching athletes preparing behind their blocks and taking that one last deep breath, Mike's doing the same thing, but he's doing it knowing full well that everyone is either in the car, or at home, wherever they are listening, the radio, that they're listening intently to what's about to happen. And we all get sucked into that.
And the story's got even bigger and better in London 2012. And before we move on to that, let's hear a little message.
Hey guys, Usain Bolt here. I just want to congratulate Mike on 44 years with the BBC. I just want to wish you all the best for the future.
Short, sweet. It's the way he does it, the way he's always done it. Usain Bolt, what does that mean?
You're not going to ask me to respond to that, are you?
What do you
Is
make
he
of that?
crying, Ellie? Is he crying?
No, I know this. No, I'm going to try. Before the hour is up. But this is, as you say, somebody who you followed all the way through from the 17-year-old in Jamaica.
And I have to say, he never forgot that. He never forgot that I was there. Not so much at the birth, because when I interviewed him at 17, as I mentioned in the programme, he won the World Junior Championship at 15. So he was already very well known within athletics. But outside of athletics, he was unknown. And I get that he appreciated that I was around in the very early days. And it wasn't just a case of interviewing him. We went to his school, we spoke to his parents. So we did the whole story, and we did it, according to him, we did it properly. And whenever I saw him on tour, he was always being besieged by other athletes, but by fans as well. There was always time for a high five or a nod or whatever. So he didn't forget that.
It's a special thing to be respected, isn't it? It really is. Let's get to London then, because you two sat next to each other for one of the greatest nights in British sporting history. Super Saturday in the Olympic Stadium. Here's the closing stages of Sir Mo Farah's 10,000 metres.
And Farah now being joined on his inside by Tariku Bekele. Kenenisa Bekele is now making his charge. He's through into 5th place. The biggest challenger at the bell to Mo Farah is Muchiri. Now with 1 lap to go, Farah hits the front. He starts his run for home with 400 metres to go. And now he's being lifted by the crowd. And into 2nd place goes Muchiri. Bekele is also trying to make a challenge. Galen Rupp is in 4th place. There's no more than a metre or so between the first 3. And Farah now is still in front. Can he gradually wind up the pace? 200 metres to go. He needs a blistering last half a lap. Tariku Bekele coming through into 2nd place. Kenenisa Bekele is in 5th place, but he looks like a spent force. Around on the crown of the bend, in towards the home straight, and Farah is still in front. He's being challenged by Tariku Bekele. He looks over his shoulder. He's being carried on this wave of emotion. Farah hits the front. Farah wins gold for Britain in the men's 10,000 metres, and immediately turns to celebrate. What a night! 3 gold medals for Great Britain, for Jessica Ennis, for Greg Rutherford, and now for Mo Farah in the men's 10,000 metres, the first British athlete ever to win Olympic gold at this distance. And now he falls to the track once again. Cannot believe the magnitude of what he's achieved here. Mo Farah is the Olympic champion.
I don't know about how you kept it together, how he kept it together with that crowd noise. Listen, let's speak to another man who was a big part of that night, Seb Coe, or Lord Coe, as he's also known, who was at the time the chair of the London Organising Committee. Seb, what can you say about Mike Costello?
That's not already been said in open court.
You can say hello to him anyway. It's lovely to have you with us.
I can say a lot of things, but he is absolutely, as commentators go, in the top drawer. I'm old. I was brought up. Actually, interestingly, I probably shouldn't say this as president of World Athletics, but as Mike knows, one of my passions is boxing. And I'm old enough to sort of remember Eamon Andrews on radio, Des Lynam, Jim Rosenthal, latterly John Rawling, and Mike is absolutely in that league and arguably better. I've sat next to him in commentary in athletics, not in boxing, where he's assiduous about his homework. He spends a lot of time really getting behind not just the statistics but the story, and he's got integrity, and really that's pretty much sums it up. I'm laughing at I'm just smiling at the commentary of the 10,000 because you're saying, how did anybody keep it together? 5 laps from home, I was actually sitting next to the then Prime Minister David Cameron, who turned to me and he said, what do you think we should do about legacy after the games? And I said, I take that quite seriously, but do you mind if I just watch the last 5 races? This is a bit critical. We then had the conversation afterwards, but no, it was just one of those unbelievable nights. And I feel very flattered, actually, and to have actually sat next to Mike in a commentary box on Radio 5 when he's been in full flow and in his pomp.
You know, Seb, you talk about the last 5 laps there. Normally, a 10,000 metre commentary is 20 laps of comment and chat and 5 laps of commentary building to a crescendo. But on that night, 4 laps in, I mean, there was already the euphoria around Jess Ennis. Then 4 laps into the race, Greg Rutherford is crowned long jump champion. And so for 21 laps, well, it was already like that, but for 21 laps, it was just manic for the whole time. It was a very different commentary.
And you talk about not going too soon, giving yourself somewhere to go. There was no chance, was there, with that crowd?
21 laps at top pitch.
Yeah.
You had to match the crowd.
Well, we thought we should get another message from somebody quite special. Have a listen to this.
Hi, Mike. It's Mo Farah here. Just want to say thank you for everything for over the years. 44 years is incredible career, and I was lucky enough. You commentating over the years and really got to know you. I wish you all the best, mate. And thank you for everything, Mike. I'll see you soon some point in life.
That was Sir Mo Farah.
You're getting there.
We're going to crack him eventually. Seb, I made a remark earlier on about getting the respect of the people that you're commentating on, and the relationship between commentators and athletes. Clearly, you've got to have a journalistic distance, but to have that respect, what does that take?
They're 2 challenging horses to ride at the same time, and I think Mike could be the first to say that. And I know we've chatted about this in the past, and it is tough because you're on the circuit, you get to know the athletes, and you need to understand them, you need to pick up on strengths, on vulnerabilities. It's really an important part of David Coleman was extremely good at that. I mean, it became a bit of a laugh at the end, but Coleman, even in his commentaries, would say, look, talking to so-and-so in the lift this morning coming out of the hotel, good commentators, like good journalists, never lose any opportunity to actually get behind the individual, and Mike was as good as anybody at doing that. But then that calls upon sometimes a bit of a distance and the integrity to be able to call it as it is. And sometimes, if a race is bad or somebody's performed poorly that you really like and get on with, you've got to say that. You can't sugarcoat it.
Is that something you've found, Mike, that it is quite difficult to tread that line sometimes?
All the way through. That's the most difficult balance to find, no question about it. Because you go to a training track, you go to a gym, and you spend time with these people. You see what they're investing in it, and it's hard to criticise, on the day, on the big night.
Yeah. Well, when Seb said you did it, you're going to carry on doing it, we hope, for 5 Live. Anybody who's thinking we're never going to hear a Mike Costello athletics commentary again, don't worry quite yet. Seb, Ali, thank you so much for joining us this evening and paying tribute to Mike. Lots of people getting in touch as well, I should say, on social media. I have to read this out because Mike is not on Twitter. You're still not on Twitter, are you? No. The number of times people message me on Twitter saying, can you get Mike Costello on Twitter? But it's not happening at the moment.
Yes, so they can point the gun.
Yeah. Hilary Evans says the commentary on Jess Ennis's 800 metres in the final event of London 2012 in the heptathlon, probably the greatest ever heard on the BBC, says Hilary. John from Leeds, Mike Costello, simply the best. Radio every time for boxing, spine-tingling voice. The commentary of Mo's double gold, awesome, you will be sorely missed. And Lee Houghton says, I just want to say thank you to Mike. Butler, Johnson, Agnew, Ingham, in the pantheon of truly great sports radio commentators, Mike's place is secure, always authoritative, always compelling. There simply is no such thing as a poor Costello commentary. Simply, Mike, we will miss you.
Oh, we've heard some of them tonight.
Yeah, we have, and we're going to hear more. Because we spoke about your lifelong passion for boxing earlier in the show, Mike, but it was almost by accident, wasn't it, that you ended up as a boxing commentator, and this was because of something that happened to John Rawling, who we've mentioned a couple of times tonight.
Yeah, and there's two strands to this, actually. I mean, listening to Seb Coe and saying, he was alongside me. The first time I commentated alongside Sebastian Coe was at the 2002 Commonwealth Games here in Manchester, when John Rawling lost his voice. And I was there reporting, not commentating, for the BBC World Service still at the time. And the athletics producer, Matthew Allen at the time, came running down, ashen-faced, to say that John Rawling had tried to do an evening's preview in the news bulletin and his voice had gone. What are you doing during the evening? Can you come up and do some commentary? And I did that Monday night of the athletics programme in Manchester 2002. I did the Tuesday night and the Wednesday night. And that was a massive step up for me in terms of long sustained stints of commentary, which weren't always possible to do on the World Service because of constraints of time and constraints of money. And then later on, 3 years later, John was then headhunted by ITV. They were getting back into boxing in a big way around the time of Amir Khan turning professional out of the Athens Olympic Games. Joe Calzaghe was flying as a world champion at the time. And so John went to work for ITV, and I was then asked to fill in the void left by John here at 5 Live. And so that was the first full, if you like, the full commitment to domestic BBC radio that I had there in 2005. I'd done many bits and pieces in the build-up, but then it was the full-on move from the World Service across to 5 Live towards the back end of 2005. And that coincided really with the emergence of Usain Bolt, as I said, and Floyd Mayweather was world champion already by then, but he wasn't the superstar that he would become in a couple of years' time. So I was so lucky that my time as correspondent almost started with the emergence of Bolt and Mayweather in my two sports as absolute icons who would thrive and survive in any era.
And whoever came up with the idea of putting you and Steve Bunce together was a bit of a genius, weren't they, Buncey?
I'm not so sure. If I claim well, it's a genius if I claim it, but if we give it to young Jack Davenport, who's not even shaving yet, we're putting a heavy burden on his shoulders, for God's sake. The poor little sausage. So Mike, I'll tell you, we'll give it to Mike. Let Mike claim it, for God's sake. And let me just say straight away, if I get kicked off of this, okay, because Bill Clinton's coming on, right, or Oprah Winfrey's coming on, because this happened before. We did an Arlene night once, okay? I was wedged between Jesse Jackson and Bill Clinton, and I was ceremoniously yanked off with Costello steering it. So if I get yanked off in a minute to make way for, say, Oprah Winfrey or someone else, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy.
Well, we'll keep you with us for the moment, Buncey. I think we talked about Mike growing up in South London. You actually grew up not very far away from each other, and you reckon, Buncey, that you boxed against each other as kids. Is this true?
No, we boxed on the same night several times. We got the programmes from places like the Cat's Whiskers. But I was sent one week to spar with Mike because I was having a good run in the schoolboys. But when I got down there, he already had he was only about 14. He had like a tiny moustache, and he was giant. Now he was much bigger than me. He was about 11 years older than me and about 2 stone heavier than me. And they stuck me in a ring at the Lynn Amateur Boxing Club where Mike boxed, and it's the tiniest ring you've ever seen in your life. He knew every single inch of it. I didn't. And I remember him whacking me and smashing me to bits. Now it seems odd to say that, but he was a bully. Ellie,
right.
You're looking over
He's got
him.
Right of reply. Mike, you have right of reply now.
He can reply all he likes. I'm telling you, that's the truth. He was that much bigger than me. He was shaving at 14.
One of Buncey's extraordinary tales. I couldn't match that. But it's true.
But it's true. Yeah, here we go. He had a 4-wheel drive van when he was 15.
Right, as
golden days.
Whatever the truth is of that, we can.
But you know, for amateur shows back then, that my training, my gym was in a place called Manor Place Baths in Walworth in southeast London, and next door was the arena where the baths, which was changed into an arena where shows would take place, and even for junior boxing shows, there would be queues outside all the way down the street for people to get in. Amateur boxing back then was massive.
Well, from that to the very top, because you two are massive, massive Muhammad Ali fans. We know that. And you've made hours of brilliant programmes about the man, including, as Bunsey has hinted, interviewing former President Bill Clinton about Muhammad Ali in 2011. You were on the ground in 2016 for the great man's funeral as well. But before any of that, back in the 90s, Mike, you visited his childhood home in Louisville and you met with his younger brother, Rahman.
There are 2 bedrooms here in the house here. My mother and father had the front bedroom. We had the back bedroom. We had twin beds. Muhammad slept on one side. I slept on the other side of the room. It was very nice. Hi, Sugar Pie. The cute little baby.
All the kids coming out still believing something special is going on.
You heard of Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay? He used to live here, the great boxer. Champ of the world lived here. You know that? I'm Muhammad's brother, Rahman. How are you? Let me shake your hand, honey. They're from London, England.
Hi. I've been here 15 years, and I'm used to having people pull up. We used to having busloads of people pulling up and wanting to see the house, take pictures of the house. I mean, we've had Japanese, everything you can think.
What's your name?
Darlene Sanders.
That's wonderful.
You must be pretty proud, though, to live so close to where the legend was.
Oh, yes, and when I saw him walk up, I'm like, that must be his brother. Okay, that must be his brother. Yes, I am. I really am.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I am honored.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Yes.
It's amazing, the appeal.
It's amazing.
Still endures.
It's really wonderful for me to still be able to live and see this, because imagine this. As little boys sitting on that step, we would daydream. My name was Rudolph Clay then. He said, Rudy, I'm going to be the champ of the world boxing. I'm going to take you around the world, buy Mama a new house, and everything he said he's done. How in the world could a little boy, that little child, that age, predict his future? But Muhammad Ali did it.
Courage that he showed as an older man struggling with Parkinson's was a different kind of, and perhaps a greater courage than he showed as a young man, risking having his body battered and his face battered and his brain battered. That kind of courage is what he manifested, as long as I've known him, in dealing with his own illness. I mean, it took a sack full of guts to carry that Olympic flame up that ramp with his hand shaking. Year in and year out, he'd go out, he'd be seen, he wasn't self-conscious. He's something special.
Well, he always said he wouldn't go quietly, and for one final time, the chants fill the air here in Louisville. Ali, as the convoy reaches the corner of 9th Street and Muhammad Ali Boulevard here. And the crowds that have grown from dozens early on this morning to thousands now say their last goodbyes. A crowd here of old and young, of black and white, many of them in T-shirts saying Muhammad Ali, the greatest, 1942 to 2016. And I might just make my way now down to the roadside area to one of these women who's just thrown a bunch of flowers onto the hearse. Ma'am,
yes.
Tell me your emotions this morning.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm just full of emotions. I can't even describe.
I saw you throwing your flowers onto the hearse. It's like the realisation after a week that's almost been celebratory that he's gone.
I know. It's hard to believe. I feel happy and sad all in mixed together. It's a great feeling.
It's tears in your eyes. It's a tough one.
Right.
No more floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee.
Muhammad Ali, he's the greatest.
Thanks for your time.
Wow. Thank you.
Well, Mike, that was you at Muhammad Ali's funeral. Before that, we heard from former President Bill Clinton, and when you went to Ali's childhood home in Louisville and met his brother Rahman. How much did it mean to you to tell that story?
That was really important. In fact, the visit to his home was in 2004, along with Steve. We were in Louisville for a fight between Mike Tyson and Britain's Danny Williams. We decided to take the journey out there with a really charismatic and knowledgeable driver called Steve, who made the trip much more important than it was, actually, and much more informative. But then to go to the funeral in 2016, as morbid as it seems, it seemed really important to me, because I'm often asked, is there an event that you wish you could have commentated at. And I always say the rumble in the jungle between Ali and George Foreman in Zaire, as it was then in 1974. And I never got to cover anything of Ali, and so to have been there on that day, and the family had said they wanted it to be a celebration, and it really felt like a celebration. And it was a massive day with the city all coming out to bid him farewell, and that was a really important moment in my career. And shortly after that, you didn't play it, but that I did lose it there as the cortege was going by. Just about the only time I think I've lost it on air, but I was choked up when the cortege went past. That was my childhood hero. That was somebody who told me you could be different, and that kind of philosophy and that effect had found its way all the way over here. We heard from Mo Farah earlier on. His childhood hero was Muhammad Ali, from a different religion, different background, different country, different generation, and yet he has the same childhood hero as me. That was the impact of Muhammad Ali.
Well, to bring things up to date, it's a boom time for British boxing at the moment, and there's a piece available on the BBC Sport website today, and you've named Josh Warrington against Lee Selby at Elland Road in 2018 as one of the top 10 moments of your career, Mike. So let's listen to a bit of it.
20 seconds to go for Josh Warrington. He flicks out a jab in the centre of the ring, tries a right hand over the top. Selby makes him miss. They exchange punches, fighting, punching, brawling to the end. The bell about to sound, and Warrington raises both gloves skywards here. Surely the dream has come true. No emotion from Lee Selby. He pats Warrington on the stomach as if to say, you've done enough here this evening. Celebration in the corner over on the far side. Josh Warrington raises his right glove, takes the acclaim of the crowd. A special performance. He was told he would need the performance of his life. He's produced it, and Josh Warrington surely is the featherweight champion of the world.
And Josh Warrington wanted to send you a little message as well.
Hello, Mike. Hope you're well. Do apologise that I can't be on the show tonight, but we've been into the last week of our training. In fact, we've got a last sparring session. Some things just prioritise going on to your show, but that's only a slight just. I hope you're well, and I want to say I'm absolutely honoured that you've picked my fight against Lee Selby, where you did the comms, as one of your highlights of your career. That absolutely means the world. Very honoured in that respect. I've got a lot of respect for yourself. And yeah, there's two fights. What I have on my iPod still is that one and the Carl Frampton commentary. And whenever I need a boost in motivation or need a little, I've got like a tough run coming up, I know I can always listen to that, and it certainly gives me a kick up the backside when most need it, especially the 12th round. I'm sure you'll do it better than myself. Well, you do it better than myself because it's your own commentary, but that epic 12th round, Warrington is going forward, punching, biting on his gum shield, throwing the shots. 10 seconds left. The crowd are roaring. The crowd are cheering. And are we going to see Leeds' first world champion? And there is a sound of the bell. Warrington raises his arms. He believes he is a world champion. Or somewhere along them lines. But, oh man, I hope I did that some justice. But yeah, absolutely fantastic to hear that. And you've been a credit to the BBC and to 5 Live, and I'm sure you'll be missed on the commentary there, but I'll certainly be seeing you again on the TV work. Cheers, Mike.
Oh, well, Josh Warrington, he's currently preparing, as he said, for his rematch against Maurizio Lara, which will be broadcast on 5 Live next Saturday night, as well as some other broadcasters too, I imagine.
Someone else will be ringside as well.
Else, yeah. But for you, I mean, we talk about what it has meant to you to hear, to hearing Josh Warrington, just describing what that commentary has meant to him. And Steve, what has it meant to you to be ringside with Mike all those times?
Well, we've been in some great places, obviously, New York and the MGM in Las Vegas. all over Great Britain, but to some really bizarre places. Like we had a great night once in Helsinki with Carl Froch. We had a brilliant night once in the middle of nowhere in Denmark under a volcanic cloud. It doesn't matter where you go. This is what I mean. It's really if you're somewhere and there's 90,000 people around you and they light up they hold up their torches and it looks like you're walking out in the Milky Way. Of course, it's fantastic. But when you're somewhere in a pit, and I mean a pit, and you feel like there's just you and the people in the ring and it becomes that special relationship, it doesn't matter where you are. And that's what we managed to dig up. That's what we managed to unearth. We could build something from ringside. And no word of a lie, we could have done the South East London under-11s from the Fisher Downside Club in front of 14 dads. And I swear to you, you'd say it was one of the best things he'd ever done. And by the way, it would have been one of the best things he's ever done. Because here's the thing: have you ever known? I know that Bill Clinton's waiting to come on. Don't worry, that's the finale, Costello. You're going to be. Don't worry, Bill's on the line. I can just smell it. But let me just tell you something. It doesn't matter. Have you ever known anyone whose work either doesn't improve with each one? How do you get better than what we did on June the 1st in Madison Square Garden, when it's been watched by 1 million people, when suddenly Andy Ruiz is on the floor, then Andy Ruiz is up there, Joshua's on the floor. How'd you get better than that piece of commentary? Well, you know what? You listen to the last piece of commentary. Let's say you get better than that piece of commentary. And it's a simple fact. It's absolutely true. Apart from one or two stinkers with Matt Skelton back in 15 years ago, apart from that, it's been a smooth trajectory up. It's been beautiful.
Yeah. And don't underestimate the importance of Steve and Alison Kirbishley, who we heard from earlier. Alison Kirbishley will allow me to pick up the binoculars in a long-distance race where I'm struggling to see who's where and who's making what move from the back of the field. I will pick up the binoculars. She will carry on commentating. Steve Bunce mentioned there June the 1st back in 2019 when Anthony Joshua was beaten. We did 3 fights on that night and I played presenter, interviewer and commentator roles, but I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have left the commentary position and gone wandering around ringside chasing the boxers if I didn't have Steve there, perfectly capable of holding the ship, as well as all the great asides and the great stories. They are so important to a commentator. To have somebody you've got trust in and you've got faith in alongside is really, really important.
Yeah. Look, we're pretty much out of time, as we've said. And it feels like we've only just scratched the surface. So there's got to be a book, surely, on the go. Are you writing a book, Mike?
No, but I did write one for my son for his 21st birthday, just to spell out that there's a big wide world out there and go and get it. And it was as much about the people and places that I've met as much as the sport. I've been very, very lucky. As I say, if you told that kid of 16 getting on the 53 bus, what would happen? He'd settle for it.
Well, we haven't got Bill Clinton on to finish, but we have got your son. Connor.
Hello, Ellie. How are we?
Connor, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you for having us on. How are we?
Yeah, we're very well. Look, I mean, you know your dad better than anybody out there. Just tell us about this book and what it meant to you.
Of course. I hope I'm not cramping your style, by the way, Dad. But here we go. So Dad handed me this book on my 21st birthday. It's very special to me. Obviously, he highlights the sporting memories, the sporting events, the commentaries over the years, all of the travels since a similar age to what I am now. So I'll just give you a little flavour. Here's the foreword that he wrote to me in the book, and it goes a little something like this. The Odyssey has spanned 25 years, 50 countries and 200 cities. Along the way, I have marvelled close up at the genius of Usain Bolt and Floyd Mayweather. Sat outside the childhood home of Muhammad Ali, talking old times with his brother. I've given a lift to Oscar-winning actor Daniel Day-Lewis, played football in Africa with and been scolded by Sir Bobby Charlton, and I've interviewed, as Buncey said, the former US President Bill Clinton. In 1976, the careers teacher at St Thomas the Apostle Boys' School in Peckham asked all of us in fifth year to name 3 jobs we wanted to do after leaving school. I listed journalist, photographer and film director. You're a bit of a dreamer, aren't you? Was her reply. Well, she had a point. The great American writer Mark Twain once said, "Don't part with your dreams. When they are gone, you may still exist, but you have ceased to live. Keep dreaming, son. Dad."
What a beautiful thing to say to your son, Mike. And Connor, thank you so much for coming on and reading that for us. And can I just say that We've cracked him at the end.
Finally.
I got him.
Final word.
The only person that cracked him on air was Muhammad Ali.
And you, Connor. Connor, who is also following his dreams and working in TV production as well. But I mean, Mike, can I just say it's just such a privilege to have worked with you, because we all want to work with the best in our time. And I know that, we all feel that we have worked with the best with you, and that we will be doing so again. I very much hope. So it's been a privilege for us to be with you in commentary boxes.
Believe me, for me too.
And to the listeners as well who've got in touch. So many people have got in touch to pay tribute to you, Mike. And we are going to just collate them all and give them to you, because as we've said, you're not on social media. But thank you so much, Mike Costello.
Thank you.
Broadcasting legend on 5 Live. Coming up next on 5 Live Sport, Cristiano Ronaldo to Manchester City, Kylian Mbappe to Real Madrid, the Champions League group stage draw, and the man who could be marking Lionel Messi on his PSG debut. That's all on the EuroLeagues with Steve Crossman after the news with Aaron Paul.
Listen on BBC Sounds.